Hello and welcome to this special broadcast on One India. It's an all-important day. January 20th, 2025 would be going into the history books as one of the days that promises to transform or make America great again. We are bringing you this continuous coverage on the inauguration of the 47th President of United States of America, Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance obviously would be taking also oath as the Vice President. My colleague Nagin Singh is there with me. Nagin, obviously a red letter day, a big day for United States. How do you see it?
Well, it is going to be historic because, of course, after 40 years, the event is going to take indoors. This is one of the things. But the biggest thing is that Trump got ceasefire deal on the eve of inauguration. This is something that he must have figured long back. But this is something that we can compare when Modi ji comes into power. He makes big decisions. Now here we have Trump, who are good friends, and Trump has been known for Abraham Accord when he was there from 2016 to 2020, and now he has said that he is going to take major steps, at least 200 decisions in a day. That is a
Right.
big thing to do. And now we have Trump coin, Melania coin. So there's a lot which is happening that Americans haven't seen. Despite this California wildfire, there is buzz in Washington. People are gathering in. There is cold, extreme cold. Of course, we know that's why the entire inauguration has been brought in inside. And we know about the situation when Trump was attacked not just once but twice. And I hope that today security officials will be at peace because at least the event is happening inside, which will reduce the risk and it will make things easier for the security officials who are there. So we are going to see a lot of change.
Right.
India will be sleeping, but in United States, it will be a new day, a new era, and a lot is going to change in America after Trump takes oath.
Absolutely, and all eyes would be on Trump, as you rightly mentioned, Nagin, that on the eve of his presidency taking oath, he got the all-important Hamas-Israel peace deal signed, and that is into action now. Whether he would be able to convince Ukraine and Russia to call off the war, that is something that remains to be seen. Putin, meanwhile, has wished Donald Trump ahead of the mega inauguration, and he has said that he hopes for lasting peace. A very loaded statement there from Vladimir Putin. And we have known how in 2017, Putin and Donald Trump both made headlines. A lot of allegations came Donald Trump's way that the elections were rigged and there was some Russian hand in it. But everything said and done again, I think for
We
the
are going
world
to
as of
see
now.
this meeting very soon. Both the governments, they have been saying, there have been so many comments in the media that Trump is going to meet Putin. Whether it happens in Switzerland or it happens in UAE, that is the question, of course. But that is going to happen. This deal is going to happen, and of course about the territories that Russia has gained from Ukraine. This is another big talk that only Trump can resolve if you believe his supporters that Russians might take over the territories that they have taken during the war, they have covered during the war. So this can be a big discussion, but we'll have it soon, and then only we might see the end of another war. However,
Right.
one thing that we must raise that despite ceasefire in Gaza, there have been events and there has been firing by Israeli forces when Palestinians were waiting for the prisoners. So, of course, we are bringing you all the coverage on One India, and you can see our international channel page, and where you'll find the detailed coverage of Trump. Of course, Trump has just met Biden. Biden and Trump are having tea, and in 1.5 hours, we'll have a new president of United States of America.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also from the Indian side, the who's who, those who are attending, one of them being the Ambanis and the pre-inauguration dinner.
Well, the joke is going around why Adani is not there. Adani should be there. And I think that he will be meeting him very soon because he is one of the biggest businessmen that India has. And of course, he is in the list of
Right.
top 4, top 5 businessmen in the world. So Adani will be there very soon.
Right, and
And
also, I mean, yes, the sentiments from the Indian diaspora too. I mean, they carry, not just the name, but also the legacy of the country and the attachment that the diaspora finds there, especially with these business tycoons from India,
And we
is
also have to
remarkable.
see the kind of craze that Indians have. The recent polls,
Hmm.
they said that the Indians are the most positive about the new Trump 2.0 governance that is going to take place from today onwards.
Hmm.
And of course, we do know that how Trump has been visiting India when Modi was there, and he made a big speech. Of course, it went viral as well. So India
Hmm.
will be looking forward that things get better. But H1B visa, that is something that Indians are worried about. And of course, you'll tell us more. You just had a great
Yes,
conversation
absolutely.
from
We
someone
just
in US.
had we spoke to the Indian diaspora. They're mostly working in the IT sector and law firms. But you can watch that interview on One India itself. Very quickly, I would like to introduce our guests here. Atul Aneja, he should be here momentarily. I've been told. Purnima Nath, Republican leader, would be joining us all the way from Wisconsin in USA. Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat and visiting fellow scholar, George Washington University, joins us from Washington, D.C. Atul Aneja, as I mentioned, foreign and strategic affairs expert there, joining us, and a senior journalist also. Mr. Aneja, are you able to hear us, sir? All right. We will be joining with them very soon. So, again, lots of things at stake also here, not just for India, I would say for rest of the world as well, because Trump's first 10 to 15 days in office are going to be a breezer, as it has been much anticipated. The anti-immigration laws that he wants
Right.
to put in, the kind of curbs that he wants. Illegal immigration is something that he is very coming down very heavily upon, and that way, the names that we often hear with Donald Trump
Well,
are also speaking on them.
these are the issues which are the local issues, but let's also think of what he has been saying about Greenland, about Panama Canal. Then
Hmm.
he is talking about Canada as the 51st state. And Trump is known for the big decisions, and as we discuss about the borders and immigrants who are there, the illegal migrants who are there, of course their life is going to be tough.
Hmm.
And Biden, meanwhile, before leaving the office, he ensured that people from 4 countries, from small countries, but at least 1.5 lakh 150,000 people, their stay Biden has secured, which Trump did not want at all. But before leaving the office, what
Hmm.
Biden has done, that he has secured that these 1.5 lakh illegal immigrants will stay in USA. Now let's see what Trump can do
Hmm.
to revoke this order. However, so far it looks impossible. He's going to take major steps, of course, but the US Senate, how much the US Senate is going to support him for the entire cause, and
Okay.
how tough the USA can get over migrants, that we have to see. We do know that Trump wants to be
Hmm.
much tougher than what he was in his previous term. He's coming with a vengeance.
Yeah, we're coming with a vengeance, and lo and behold, our guests are also here. Thank you so much for your patience and for joining us back once again. Purnima Nath, Republican leader, is there with us, and Atul Aneja, former foreign and strategic affairs expert, senior journalist, also there with us. Purnima ji, let me begin with you first. Red letter day, I would say, and literally the city and the town would also be painted red. Only justified that you are also wearing the shade of red here. So thank you so much for the spirit. Help us understand how are things going to transpire from here, first of all, and secondly, what changes from this morning onwards?
Namaste. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. By the way, red is a beautiful color. It
Hmm.
is also a color of love. It's also obviously at the same time it's also color of vengeance. But I'll take it to the positive side at this point of time. As you know,
Hmm.
President Trump has very clearly given a massive directives of what he's going to do in terms of the executive orders that he is going to pass on the first day itself, the number of it, sheer number of it, of course, But on the same time, the focus initially is going to be national security, border security, but inflation issues that has actually heavily burdened our own country, and the people, the regular ordinary people who are actually who are having tremendous trouble for buying breads and groceries and milk and eggs, and gas prices were going through the roofs, and inflation was actually hurting us because even rent prices went up, and the energy prices that we have seen within the last few years, they continuously increased, and there's no we saw no signs of relief at all. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that his executive orders initially is going to be helping in terms of bringing down the cost. He has spoken about putting 25% on Mexico and Canada, obviously
Mm-hmm.
for controlling the border situation. But you have heard him talking about the massive deportation, execution agenda that has been unleashed at this point of time. I think all in all, overall, in terms of economic strength and the internal security, the economic the relief that we have to go through in this country is going to be something that we're going to see. On top of it, the woke agenda that we have seen in the last 4 years in terms of Marxism, infiltration of Marxism in the schools and colleges, and gender dysphoria, gender transitions,
Mm-hmm.
as well as hormonal intake that was happening without the knowledge of the parental consent. It was actually dangerous for a country or any community that the parents actually didn't have a say. The entire ecosystem, from the psychiatrists to the teachers to the government entities, they were all working together, but they were all trying to keep the parents in dark. So to me, it was something that I didn't expect, that kind of things in America, when we
Mm-hmm.
actually promote democracy in the entire world, and suddenly we were witnessing that horrific kind of undermining of democracy within our own country. So I'm sure in the first 100 days, we're going to see those taken into effect, that is going to give us massive relief in terms of war. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in his first term, there were no new wars, but the ones that were going on, it was continuing, and then discussions were happening in terms of whether how to wind it out. So when it comes to war, it's impossible to say that the warmongering, the military machines that America traditionally had is going to be completely gone. It's not. The reason I say it is because in the Middle East, we're going to see Iran actually going to play a massive role in terms of destabilization. And then when it comes to China, we are already hearing about Taiwan. And
Mm-hmm.
then so overall speaking, the conversation with Putin might be a little positive at the same time. But what I have seen over the last phase of Trump campaign was quite positive to me, because the folks that were trying to his confidants and the closest folks that were talking about, they understood the situation in terms of Russia and the NATO. The NATO's expansion was illegal to me on the basis that they actually didn't keep their own word. And when Soviet Union was dismantled, NATO
Mm-hmm.
should have been dismantled as well, but that didn't
Right.
happen. So when we talk about China is expansionist, at the same time, US could be looked at it the same way as well.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think the understanding was there, the sentiment was from a perspective of this. Yes, this has happened. Probably going forward, President Trump will make some decision in terms of how to rectify the situation, and not being a warmonger. But at the same time, when I heard about the Panama Canal, or the Canada 51st state versus the renaming of Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America,
Right.
and
Right.
also the Green Deal, that actually raises further more
Right.
questions.
Purnima
His
ji. Got
primary
your
base, his
sentiments.
primary
Got
Christian
your
base
sentiments
actually
there.
is quite pumped up in terms of that kind of takeover and expansionist idea.
Right.
I, as an Indian American moving to America as a naturalized citizen of America,
Hmm.
proudly representing America on a global stage, I'm a bit taken back on that particular notion.
Stay
So
with
I
us.
would
Stay with
have to
us.
see exactly what President Trump actually comes up with. And I would hope that it's not going to be in that
Right.
direction at all. Because if we communicate to the world that for national security reason we have to take over certain land or territory or so, Russia
Right.
would come and say, I'm going to take
We'll come
over
to that. We'll
Cuba,
come
or
to that,
China is going
Purnima.
to
Thank
take
you so
over
much. Stay with us. Stay with
Taiwan.
us.
You will. Thank you.
What Trump promises and what he can do is very clearly. What he can't do are only a few things. We will come to that. Stay with us. Really appreciate your time here. And again, Atul Aneja ji is also here, and so is Pradeep Kapoor.
Hello, Atulji. Nagin Singh here. Well, my first question to you is that Bloomberg has reported that Trump is going to declare national energy emergency moments after taking oath, which will give him multiple rights. And it says that he's aiming to reverse President Joe Biden's climate change initiative. So, how aggressive Trump is going to be if he's going to take such decisions right after taking oath? What big changes can we see? Of course, Canada, Panama Canal, and Greenland we have been talking about, but he's trying to control USA in a very different way, considering Musk is also there, one of the biggest businessmen here.
Well, as you can see, there is a paradigm shift which has taken place. And this shift is from what constituency Biden and what Trump would like fondly calls the deep state was trying to push on all dimensions. You mentioned about energy. Purnimaji mentioned about the woke culture.
Right.
It's a complete shift from that agenda. And then the third thing is that it is more, in a way, domestic oriented, making America great again, rather than what can be termed as globalist, to spread American hegemony across the world. So, I mean, there's a complete the foundation and support base is also entirely different. You had Biden being supported by the so-called globalists like George
Right.
Soros and company, and the so-called deep state,
Yeah.
whereas Trump is completely shifted from the other side. Now, what does it exactly mean on the ground? Now, you mentioned about energy. I think that's probably the first target because Trump is not necessarily a fond of renewables like wind energy or solar, etc. I mean, he's still into the hydrocarbon age, and I
Right.
think that's where his base as well belongs. So you're going to have a big lease of life for companies like Chevron and Exxon, etc. And so you remember in the first term, it was drill, drill, drill. I mean, so that's something which is going to be revived. And as you mentioned, that's probably going to be the first kind of steps. And second thing is that's also going to be the competition to Russia, for example, because it's
Yeah.
Russian gas and oil which is being pumped, and Trump has been on record that American exports have also to expand. So oil and gas is back in a big way, which is part of his scheme of things.
So
Uh,
businesses are going to work very differently. The market is going to change if all that happens. Because of course, even India is considering that we should have nuclear energy. We want to expand in that field. They have researches going on. But if we want to go back to it, and if this is going to be core of US businesses, then things would be different because we know that even Musk is trying to get electric vehicle, the best of the electric vehicles.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a mix of the two. You're not going to have only one form of energy, but it is not that kind of a fanatical opposition to hydrocarbons. I mean, yeah, I think ultimately you're going to have a mix of both kinds of energy, the new energy as well as the traditional energy, which I think can be a good balance. You mentioned about Musk electric vehicles. This is new energy,
Right.
battery-driven car. I think both will coexist. But you're not necessarily into the theory of climate change and
Hmm.
what downstream effects it has. But I think as a person who is into the energy business, you're going to have both kinds of energy, the mix. Then you also mentioned about Greenland and Panama Canal. I think that's where the competition with China comes in, because Greenland sits on the new route, which is called the Arctic route, of which is from the Arctic Circle. If you move towards the east, you head towards Alaska, and if you move west, you head towards Europe. And Greenland comes right in the middle of it. Now, the Chinese and the Russians are both in the Arctic Council, are very strong members. And frankly, companies like Costco, I've been in China. I mean, I've reported from China for a few years. I mean, that's a huge, massive company which is already moved into the Arctic route. So I think there's a China angle which is big time over there, as is the case with the Panama Canal,
Right, and there is
because
OM2 in Greenland.
and Panama Canal is also controlled by a Hong Kong-based company. So I think that's where the Chinese dynamic is coming in. I mean, the well springs of what Trump is saying. I don't think you're going to send your forces out there, but you flag certain points to the Chinese. That's a communication specifically aimed at the Chinese, and to the rest of the world, that where U.S. core interests lie. I mean,
Right.
Trump is going to be assertive about it. So I think there's a lot of messaging which is going on. I very much doubt you'll need military force to enforce it. But yeah, you put these countries on notice and under pressure, including Canada, the
Right.
so-called 51st state of the
Stay with
United
us,
States.
Mr. Neja. Stay with
You
us. Pradeep Kapoor, former
you are
diplomat and
no friend
visitor.
of Trump. I mean, so that again is a
Right.
personal element which do it.
Right, absolutely. Stay with us. Pradeep Kapoor ji is there with us. Welcome to One India, Mr. Kapoor. Obviously, there are so many international aspects to a new president assuming office in United States. Coming back home, if we take a closer look at Make America Great Again or America First policies, Mr. Kapoor, how do you see it impacting India's interests? Does this aid or help the Indian cause, or is it a cause of worry for India?
Thank you very much. What I would, like to talk about here is that the breaking U.S. forces were, overlapping with the breaking India forces to a very great extent. If you think about the woke forces, George Soros, the Islamic jihadis, the leftist Marxists, the other such forces which were coalescing together and threatening the two countries. One force which was more applicable to India was the evangelical forces, which are not working towards breaking US forces, but a lot of the other forces were running parallel. Now, to the extent that Tim Walz, as the vice president candidate with Kamala Harris, signed a paper with the Muslims on equal power sharing, which was very, very shocking. And I think that also made a lot of the Hindus vote for Trump in much larger numbers. Otherwise, Hindus are traditionally people who vote for Democrats. I think this was the first election since the last so many decades that Hindus voted for Trump and Republicans. So today, what do you have? You have the Senate, which is controlled by the Republicans. You have the Congress, which is controlled by the Republicans. You have the White House, which is controlled by the Republicans. You have the judiciary, which is controlled by the Republicans. The media, the mainstream media was another element, which was, not really talking favorably about Trump at all and propagating the other narrative. Now they are coming to Trump on bended knees practically. All the influence which had been exerted by China earlier, a lot of that is dissipating. The social media is also coming towards Trump in a big way. We have seen about how Elon Musk took over Twitter, and Twitter, which was totally against Trump in the earlier tenure, it is now completely turned around. So is Meta. So there has been a lot of shifts over the last few years. Now, these portend to a very great extent very positively for India, because Trump and India relations have been good, very good. There have been certain minor irritants because for him, if I have to look at his personality, look at his psychology, look at the way he thinks or works, for him, it is primarily America, America, America. Anything which falls into that framework, is good. And India falls into that framework very well, because for America to China on its own is
Right.
very, very difficult. Because
Purnima.
China is, nipping on the heels of America, and America knows that very well. All the strategic people here, the think tanks, the geopolitical analysts, they
Right.
understand this issue very well. That for them to go alone and sort of contain China or challenge China is not possible without Indian support. They do have support of Japan and Australia and other countries, Korea,
Right.
but till India comes in a very big way. So I think India also needs to understand that it is a turning point in our relations, and this time we have to come forward very positively. We have to take leadership in the Quad. We have to make it more effective. When I had written out the first concept note on Quad before it started,
Right.
my own thinking was that the Quad has to be a security instrument, a security entity, and that unfortunately got distracted into other areas. It has now to refocus on that. It has to, we don't want an alliance, but we want a partnership. I think we should go in for a very strong security partnership, because if America is threatened in the Indo-Pacific, India has to come forth and join forces with America and defend the free world. Similarly, if India is threatened by China on any front, America has to come to India's aid. So those sort of thinking, talking, documents, we are already very strong defense partners, but I think we need to take it now to the next level. We need not become NATO +1 or NATO +5 or NATO +6. I think it needs to just be US and India as very strong security partners, way beyond what we have achieved so far, but engaging in a dialogue where we don't just have 2+2, which we have been doing earlier, where you have two ministers from the Indian side, the external affairs minister
Right.
and the defense minister, or the external affairs minister and the commerce minister. I think it has to expand to 3+3 or 4+4 or even 6+6. And
Right.
thereafter, the summit level dialogue has to happen. So the narrative has to shift a little bit into something which is more concrete, absolutely clear-headed on both sides, that this is where our joint interest lies, our mutual interest lie, and this is how we have to move ahead.
Right. So now let me just update what is happening. Trump will be taking oath in 1.5 hours now. JD Vance will take oath right after 1 hour from now. And Purnima ji, my question to you is that how this term is going to be different from the previous term. Of course, Trump has played a major role even in international relations when it comes to Israel and Saudi Arabia. Of course, he went to meet North Korean dictator as well. But now, this time, what will be different? He has been talking about borders in USA, but what's different?
But Trump has become more after the shot that happened against him, not once but three times. His conviction towards America and protecting America has become even more solidified, as you can understand. And his primary base, like people like me who usually are not involved in politics, and that's how I came to politics. And I think I admire this gentleman. His conviction, his ability to stand in that particular moment has created a history. In general speaking, in any time something like this happens, we have what we have witnessed in the past is the leader actually tries to hide, and the entire force actually tries to make sure that leader is gone
Right.
from the face of the at that point of time. Even after after the incident happened, in one of the discussions, Kamala Harris was actually not really attacked, but in her talk, somebody, Palestine supporter, disrupted, and she literally just got up and left, and there was no conversation at all. So the reaction from both the leaders was extremely different, and he is furious, he is fierce, he is fearless. We know that from beginning itself, and his conviction towards making America great again, even though our GDP is extremely high. There's no comparison with any other country. The defense budget is obviously, if you add three countries, the 10 countries, top 10 countries, you still can't come to $900 billion defense
Yes,
budget and
but
things
the
like that. So there's
people
no
of
comparison.
color, do they need to be in fear? The
No,
local public there,
see,
they have been so anti-Trump for obvious reasons, and of course because of his comments. So this term is going to be more, critical for them.
right. So, I mean, I'll tell you something like that. The terminology of people of color itself is quite derogatory to me, particularly speaking. I mean, I'm also considered as a people of color in
Of course,
America,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because I'm not white. I'm not white. Obviously, I'm not Caucasian. But at the same time, I think, I understand your sentiment and the direction of your question. The question is, how do we need to be in fear? But at the same time, I'm telling you that Islamo-Marxist Democrat parties and their policies, I'm not super friendly of or fans of them. But at the same time, I have seen the discussions that unfolded in Twitter and elsewhere in terms of H1B. It was actually quite demeaning and something nasty and filthy that I have not expected. And that's why I've clearly said what I've seen in coming from the far right wingers is concerning to me as a Republican supporter, as a party member, as a supporter of Donald Trump. And I hope that he as a president is going to control and bring some understanding in that area. He doubled down on the H1B situation, but going forward, how it's going to unfold, we don't know. But as an Indian American born in
But is there
India,
fear? Is there fear in the mind of people for H1B visa? Of
I'm,
course, the Indian diaspora, you must be speaking to multiple people over there.
yes,
So,
absolutely,
what sort of fear do they have?
Because it's not clear as to how it's going to unfold. Well, Elon Musk and Trump both have doubled down on H1B, and they have clearly said that they want merit-based immigration. They want smarter people in this country. But what I have seen in the social media and the discussion wise, whether we were totally trolled and trashed through the corner, and we had no dignity at all, and it was it's absolutely disrespectful. But I didn't see President Trump coming back to the point and say that it's this is how his base shouldn't be operating. But hopefully, I'm optimistic person in general. I'm hoping that as a leader of the country, and also quite. We all look forward to him. So I think he will take the time to set the ground right as he takes
Right.
oath today. But at the same time, as you know, for the first 100 days is what is going to set the tone for his term at this point of time. But in general speaking, economic base as well as the inflation and national security is primarily concern for him. Domestic policies, including international policies and aligned with wars and things like that. So here I see immigration is a massive thing. And a lot of
Right.
people are talking about JD Vance's wife as her parents are Hindu, but nobody has spoken specifically about whether she's a Hindu or not. So I'm actually trying to understand the dynamics here, because a lot of paper, a lot of news articles have come up with how she has inspired him to become a Catholic or
Right.
baptized and etc. But whether is she an Hindu, I don't know. Whether is she a practicing Hindu, I don't know. But when it comes to in U.S.-India relationship, I don't think alienating the base that has actually voted for Trump for the first time in the entire history is going to be quite positive. So I'm kind of I'm observing the situation. There are a few things that concerns me. One is the growing Khalistani influence in the right wing side is quite concerning for me. Secondly, obviously the sort of I would say the closeness of right wingers to the Islamic entities and individuals are quite interesting to me, because at the same time, as you know, the far oakism that has happened in America, that's where the far right wing Christians aligned with the Muslims. And recently the loudest gang that spoke against the transgenderism and the gender transitions and gender dysphoria is the Islamic
Right.
community of Detroit. Michigan. So,
Right.
and that's where the
Obviously,
alignment came from.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. So I'm
absolutely.
concerned about a few things, but we'll have to wait and watch.
We'll have to wait and watch, definitely.
Just a big news that I want to share. Trump and Biden, they are traveling together to the US Capitol. So after their tea,
It's
they
finally
are,
coming to the hilt now.
and hopefully the dispute that they had for very long time, all that will be gone as Biden leaves the White House.
Chai pe
And,
charcha helped, I guess. Mr. Aneja, just taking a cue from what Purnimaji was saying, that in your opinion, how do you think Trump will balance his restrictive immigration policies with the demand of skilled professionals from India and other parts of the world?
I think once again, his agenda is domestic and to make America rise again, or great again, as he says. Now, in that process, he will do whatever it takes. Now, if that means getting more Indian techies into the United States, he'll do it. It's just going to be driven by a very single point. I
Okay.
mean, I personally think in the long run, the H-1B visa. I think, I spent some time in the Gulf. I would see that, in the Gulf, we had a stream of blue collar workers going. I see a similar tendency, but in a different way. You're going to have white collar, you're going to have techies, but who are cheaper than what you would get somewhere else, flowing into the United States, because this is one of the major drivers of the American economy. And frankly, you may have politics coming right now, but in the long run, I see a good future for Indian techies going into it, whether it's H-1B or it's going to be something else. But there seems to be a demand and there's a supply end here, and I think that's going to be the way forward when it comes to this issue.
right.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. And obviously, the procession on the program is sticking to its schedule, as Nagin had earlier mentioned, by 10 p.m. Indian
Yeah.
Standard Time. We'll
So
have
people are
JD
reaching there, they are
Yeah.
sitting in, and Trump is on the way. JD Vance is already there. Of course, S. Shankar, he was there. He met Trump when Trump went to the church, and now Trump is on the way. And we, of course, have a new panel on the way coming in, and they'll be joining you.
Right. Mr. Pradeep, when we talk about the international affairs, international relations, we have time and again touched upon the elephant in the room, that is China. Now, given Trump's strong views on China, how might India-US ties evolve as both nations aim to counter Beijing's assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific? Mr. Kapoor.
Trump's team, which he has assembled, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the National Security Advisor, they all have very sort of clear views on China, and they have very positive views on India. So if his senior advisors, who are going to be shaping the foreign policy or going ahead, deciding as to what steps have to be taken, they are all currently poised towards taking, I think, a hard line on China. I'll just come to some of the points which were mentioned earlier about the H-1B, for example. Now, the Indian diaspora, as in the US, is absolutely phenomenal, if I may use that term, because it's the highest per capita, ethnic group with the highest income for the last so many decades. It is the highest ethnic group which pays the highest amount of taxes per capita. It is the highest level of education in terms of an ethnic group. It is the highest in terms of compliance with the laws in the US. There are very few Hindus, I would say, who are in jails, if at all, you can count on your fingertips, whereas the same cannot be said about the other communities. So, in every way, and if you see the techie world or the startup world or the CXO positions in the Fortune 500 group of companies, the representation of Indians as CEOs or CFOs or CTOs or CXOs are absolutely amazing. The number of startups in the Silicon Valley is highest by Indians. The number of doctors who are from India in the US, and
Right.
every fourth doctor practically is an Indian, or even less than more than that. Similarly, the contribution by the IIT community to the US advancements, to job creation, to unicorns is also absolutely massive, quite disproportionate to our small numbers. The
Right.
contribution to the economy has been recognized. So when I talk to a lot of senators and congressmen here, they emphasize this fact that for us, you are like a dream community. The values that you bring, the family values that you bring, the ethical values that you bring, it makes our nation very strong and very positive.
Absolutely.
Also,
Absolutely.
Usha once, I remember clearly, she has never hesitated from telling clearly that she is a practicing Hindu. It is there on the internet also that Usha once is a practicing Hindu. So she also brings, and she says that I have learnt a lot of Hindu values from my parents. And she says that I, of course, encourage JD wants also to practice his Christianity, but she is not changing from being a Hindu herself.
Right.
So the
Right.
overlap between the ethical values, etc., is very strong currently.
Right.
So she will be a good positive influence on JD Vance and his thinking. As he has said himself on many occasions, he has also
Right.
made a statement during one of the interviews that probably she'd make a better vice president than I can make. So it's going to be interesting to see as we go along, because
Right.
there's a large number of Hindu Americans who are going to be employed in this current administration. Already we have seen quite a few, in terms of the prominent positions, but the
Indeed.
numbers is only
Indeed.
going to increase.
Indeed, Mr. Kapoor. Stay with us. We'll come back to you and Mr. Aneja for final comments. Let me begin with Purnimaji. Purnimaji, obviously, I would request you for your closing comments, if I may say so, because all eyes are now shifting to the all important oath taking ceremony. Yes, your opinion there.
Thank you so much. Actually, I have said that before. Until he takes both and becomes the official president of
President.
America, he needs to be quite safe, and safety and security is a massive concern for me, particularly after all these shots were taken against him. And I don't trust the other side of it. In the last 9 years were quite divisive, in the sense that media has played their role in terms of injecting massive poison into the minds of young as well as others. So we can't say that suddenly they are, they have a shift of change of mind for Donald Trump. They hate him. A lot of Democrat leaders are not attending his inaugural function, and we can see the
Right.
nastiness coming from them. Recently, I mean, even yesterday, one of the congressperson from New York said that he is a rapist and he shouldn't be president of the country. So these kind of things are going to continue. I consider this is a very important moment
Right.
for America's future at this point of time, and he must be the president. He is the right person for the country as well as for the world at this point of time. And it was only divine intervention that this is happening, and I wish him all the best, and I wish America all the best as well, because with Donald Trump, I think that with the right kind of strategies, he can actually make things happen here as well as internationally. He can bring some peace. We have seen
Right.
the glimpses in the past. So I have some concerns, as we spoken before, but in net to net, I am actually quite optimistic, as well as quite ecstatic at this point of time that my president Donald Trump is
Right.
going to be president of America pretty soon. Thank you very much for
Right.
having me. I appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
Definitely. Thank you. Have a good one there. Thank you so much, Purnimaji. Purnima Nath, they're a member of the Republican Party in the United States. Mr. Aneja, coming to you before I welcome our another colleague here, I would say, and an expert on international matters. But Mr. Aneja, your closing comments. Finally, it's Trump's era once again.
Yeah, but I'm a little concerned about this assumption
Hmm.
that it's like a Cold War beginning against China. I don't think we are not into that kind of a international framework.
Okay.
We have entered into a multipolar world where US is the strongest pole, but other civilizational states like India, China, Russia are going to be important players in the whole game. And frankly, Trump had a call with the President Xi Jinping before his inauguration. So I think there is going to be a lot of pressure on China. But again, art of cutting a good deal. Ultimately, that's going to be. And from an Indian perspective, if we are looking at 2047 to be a developed country, we have to engage all. And that would include very guardedly even China. If we have to have a Make in India program ready to go, 40% of the world's manufacturing is still over there. So while we keep our guard up, we have to engage everyone, and perhaps
Right.
more strongly with the United States, but other players matter too.
Absolutely. Words of wisdom, I would say. Thank you so much, Atul Aneja, there, an expert on foreign policy matters and also a former journalist. Shastriji is there with us in the studio. Thank you so much for taking time out before we welcome our another set of guests. Shastriji, obviously, this whole countdown to the inauguration of the 47th president uh, is a loaded development, I would say. How do you see it? What do you see changing there?
Well, the biggest change tonight will be there will be more people watching Trump
Right.
assuming office than the Kumbh Mela. So it's a kind of break from the Kumbh Mela, which has otherwise been the sinusoid of so many else.
Many Americans are here in Prayagraj, by the way.
Yes. So, but anyway, what's going to happen in Washington is not about asceticism or people renouncing anything. The billionaires all over the world will be on a roll.
Right.
They've never had a president like this. Okay, we can all say he's a felon, he's convicted of felony, first time ahead of government. But then there are so many other firsts also to Trump.
Right.
So I think that these 4 years are going to be interesting times. There will never be a dull moment because you never know what he will target, where, in which part of the world. It could be Greenland one day, it could be Taiwan the next day, it might be some place, one of those islands in the South Pacific or the mountain in Alaska. They are going to change. So it could be anything, but these will be very interesting times, and one has to perhaps track him more than any other US president has been tracked.
Absolutely, absolutely. And many critics, I would say, are still banking and hedging their bets on the fact that is Trump trying to step ahead of himself and maybe, the kind of history that he intends to make, whether it ends in an epic failure. That is also a risk that the administration could be running. Nonetheless, very soon we'll be joined by another set of panelists here. And as we have just mentioned, by 10 o'clock Indian Standard Time, which is another 30 minutes from now, J.D. Vance would be taking oath as the Vice President of United States. And at 10:30 would be the turn of President Donald Trump to take the oath for the second term, although non-consecutive terms he has served. For Donald Trump, do you see him as a maverick, Shastriji?
I think he struck a lot of fear in people.
Okay.
And he struck fear even in the present president of the United States because I think it's bad form, bad tradition, and perhaps in a way a little disgraceful and unbecoming of Joe Biden's office to have pardoned his own son, who was accused of cutting corners in a business deal and things like that. But something more remarkable has happened in the few hours before Biden is to lay down office. He has pardoned Anthony Fauci and Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, because he feels that they will be persecuted by Trump. They have not yet been charged with anything, but Milley spoke to China when the riots were there in the capital, and he assured the Chinese President Xi Jinping that the situation is very stable and there will be no war or against China, or the US will not attack China.
Right.
So Trump had called him, either he said it's treason or he called him a traitor. And firstly, of course, Trump was never comfortable with him.
Yeah, right from COVID days.
Yes.
Yeah.
And General Milley made it clear more than once that his loyalty was to the Constitution and not to Donald Trump as the president. And I remember one incident when he was walking with him to some point, and halfway he kind of turned back because he said, well, that was for a political purpose, so he didn't want to walk the rest of the way. So this is the other thing. Is it's heartening to hear India's own External Affairs Minister Jaishankar say that, well, there are many people who are nervous about Trump becoming president. India is not one of those countries. Now, I really hope that is true.
Yes,
We will not know until things begin unraveling.
Right.
But Indians have a lot of fear because of this H-1B visa.
Right.
Of course, and both Musk and Trump have said that the first issue everybody will think of will be how it will affect their survival and their life. The first thing will be birthright citizenship,
Right.
and then the H-1B visa.
Illegal immigration. Also.
Yes. So, in fact, there is already a joke doing the rounds that what Indians may ask for is not H-1B visa, but EB-1 visa. You know, this EB-1 visa is supposed to be the visa. Einstein was given a visa when he fled from Germany.
Oh.
And so the argument is Indians are so brilliant. They're contributing so much to US science, technology,
Why not give
the
them?
internet, they're leaders of the internet and so on. So maybe they should all be given something called the Einstein visa. But I think we'd all love stopped. And the other interesting thing is just been reported that there are bitcoins started by both Trump as well as Melania. I think, again, this is the first by any head of government anywhere in the world. And he also spoken. Everybody feared what he would do to China but the first thing he does is he calls up Xi Jinping and speaks to him. And I don't know if she asked him, okay, you take Greenland, can I take Taiwan then? Anything can happen now.
Absolutely, absolutely. See, I mean, changing times, I wouldn't deny for a fact that things are changing. And when Donald Trump is here, you must and you should rather expect something which is unexpected. Let me very quickly rope in our new set of guests here. Thank you so much. John Zogby, American pollster and author, joins us from Washington, D.C. Burzine Wagmar, SOS South Asia Institute, University of London, would be joining us from London. Mithali Nikore, there you see her on the screen, economist and founder, Nikore Associates. And last but not the least, Sandeep Ghosh, political commentator and business leader, should be there very soon. Let me begin with the lady on the panel first. Mithali, this is not the first time that we are speaking to each other, but in a totally different and changed scenarios. Last time when we spoke to you, your firm, Nikore Associates, if I'm not wrong, also delves into dealing with the US market and has very closely followed the developments in United States. With Trump now in the seat of power, do you feel that things would be going upwards, or is there a slight chance of risk that people are associating it with?
I mean, I remember the day we spoke on the, at the time of the election and when the results were being discussed. So I do think that, there's a very interesting global dynamic that's going around, which we should recognize. What is very interesting is there's a re-engineering of supply chains for many commodities across the world that's currently taking place with this new administration coming in. So when Trump announces and says, I would like to take control of Greenland, I mean, why is he saying that? He's not saying that for no reason. He's saying that because of the mineral wealth, the mining activity, and the fact that the kind of minerals that are available in Greenland can actually help in manufacturing electronics, electric vehicles, and control a lot of the future manufacturing activity in which China has currently been dominant and has been controlling a lot of mines in Africa. So I do think that these statements are not made without reason. And if you see, in Greenland, they're actually losing almost 40,000 liters of water per day as the ice melts. So there is a lot of land that is also becoming available. So, it's a very interesting dynamic that's playing out across the world as we see climate change intersect with global supply chains. So I do think
Right.
that with the advent of the Trump administration, we'll start to see a lot of tech industry czars coming in and pointing out these futuristic trends to the president, and then the president being very quick to actually look at how American interests can be safeguarded,
Right.
with these strategic announcements, acquisitions, if you will. So we really have to see how it plays out in the months and weeks ahead.
Right. Obviously, stay with us, Mithali. John, obviously, this history has been written. Obviously, Donald Trump coming back to power once again. How do you see this, and what's the general perception, if I may ask, for especially for the day to day? How's Monday morning for most of the Americans there?
What an interesting set of questions. I can't help but contrast today with 8 years ago and the inauguration. 8 years ago, half of the country was just totally stunned, perhaps even more. The media, the mainstream media, was overtly hostile and ready to go to war. And Donald Trump was equally hostile and ready to go to war, declared a revolution in his populist revolution in his inaugural address, but no one really had any idea what he meant. And arguably, I'm not so sure that President Trump had much of an idea of what he meant. Now, contrast that with today. It is a clear victory, a stunning victory, a much different attitude on the part of the media. I would say not so much that they support him, but that they learned it's not very good to start out being overtly hostile to a fellow who actually came close anyway to winning a majority of votes, certainly a strong majority in the Electoral College. But very importantly, we have a much clearer sense about what Donald Trump's revolution means today. We know he's going to sign perhaps about 200 executive orders on immigration, on student loans, on drilling, oil and natural gas, on the southern border, and so much. We also see him surrounding himself physically, not just in the abstract, by Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos. Is that the warning that President Biden was giving to the American people about oligarchy? Or is this a recognition that, hey, look, these are the folks that control information, and I don't need ABC News and CBS News and the New York Times. Look at who I have here next to me, the folks who control much of the information in the world. That was a very long sentence, so I think I'll stop right there. But I have a lot more to say.
But you have John actually stirred the hornet's nest here, I would say, and Brazine Wagmar is also there with us. How do you see it, Brazine? Is it too much of an ask or too much of a burden on Trump that he's surrounded by businessmen, by business honchos, and money does the talking? Is that enough for him?
Good afternoon from London. If I may just pick up the last strand from what John mentioned, I think Biden, as John would concur, was doing an Eisenhower year with his farewell address of the military-industrial complex, and how times have changed and much water has flowed under the bridge. We now have the tech oligarchs on the horizon, and yes, there is something to be said because the state has been largely untouched by the technological revolution, the digital revolution as such. It has become bloated. Regulations have sprouted at an exponential rate. Innovation has been stymied by regulatory mechanisms and the rest of it. So that may bring a blast of fresh air through foggy bottom, even as the temperatures dip to -12 as we see it today, come to think of it. That's number one. Insofar as Mr. Trump's intrigue goes, and where I would come in with Middle East and South Asian studies is, the three looming questions are Ukraine, China, and the Gulf. We can discuss all that at length subsequently. But could I just interject for a moment and come to Mr. Shastri's contention? I do not think Indians ought to be this sanguine, because I would draw your attention to the Times of India masthead, page 1 of 11th November 2024, which mentioned about Indian illegals up in the US by 855%. According to the Times of India, undocumented applications seeking asylum were in 2021 4,330. They stand now at 41,330. That is 855% of undocumented aliens, and all of them coming primarily from Gujarat, which is a prosperous state by any social indicator and yardstick in Indian developmental terms. The question of them seeking asylum strains credulity. So I think New Delhi, in its with Trump 2.0, will have to look into this and simply cannot resist accepting back by the plane loads these Indians as a quid pro quo for the H-1B visas for talented Indians going out, legally speaking, and to accept back these individuals who are quite frankly, unwarranted and ought not to be there in the first place. So that is something to watch out for. So, and that I think New Delhi perforce will have to come to some arrangement on that aspect.
It is.
Coming to 855%, as I mentioned, the Times of India, 11th November 2024. Then there is the question of, well, let's talk about the Middle East. Mr. Trump does garner some credit for pushing Netanyahu to a Lebanese truce this November past, and also in some measure, along with the outgoing Biden administration, for the ceasefire that has just come into effect, and this is the second day. The point here is this. Through the campaign, if you recollect, and Mr. Trump tends to consider the personal as a political and tends to have gripes, as we know. He can be a thin-skinned man. He did mention that Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize while I did the Abraham Accords, and I went, it was a thankless task insofar as I'm concerned. That has been gnawing at him. So that tells you where his thinking lies. And the Abraham Accords are a success by any stretch of the imagination and definition. Let's give credit to the man for that as such. The point is this. If he can bring about a rapprochement with Riyadh and bring Saudi Arabia on board, that will be of immense symbolic overtures with the Islamic world's primary state, I mean the spiritual center of Islam. True, the other OIC states may not necessarily follow suit just because MBS in Saudi Arabia would wish to seek a rapprochement. But the point is, it would make a massive impact in the region. And my contention is this, that would that were to happen in a suitable passage of time, because memories are still raw with what has happened in the last 15 months, we would look at a very strong set of allies in the Persian Gulf region, GCC allies as Bahrain, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Kuwait is out of the picture because it can be terribly anti-Semitic and is, like Qatar, given to courting Islamists. Oman is rather neutral and has amicable relations with the West and with Tehran, although it's a part of the GCC. But this coterie of states would in turn provide a massive bolster in the region to contain Iran. And it would strengthen their hand against Iran's nefarious ambitions in the region, and the fact that Iran is down and out, and considerably so, and rightly so, with its regional proxies and the rest of it, and that Khamenei is on the back foot. This would strengthen the states in the region who are more than willing to see an Iran contained, which has created havoc. Iran is the Pakistan of the region by running with the hare and hunting with the hounds. It talks about Islamic unity, but has at the same time subvented and supplied and sponsored havoc, murder and mayhem, and instability throughout the entire region, a denial of which is simply not on the cards. I'll stop here for now so that we can proceed to other contributors. Thank you.
Appreciated, Burzine, your inputs there. And it gives me one quick question to Mr. Sandeep Ghosh, who has been there waiting patiently. And I'll come back to Mr. Shastriji also. Mr. Ghosh, obviously, what Bujin says, a lot is riding on President Trump's second presidency. And when it comes to solving the wars or putting, say, Middle East in order, do you think that for business segment also, if Donald Trump at all chooses to mediate or try to put things in order as far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned, it is going to help not just United States or India or Russia for that matter, but the whole world?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me over. The first thing, what one can predict about Trump is that he's totally unpredictable. So I don't think we should be hazarding too much of a guess as to what he's going to do. But what I do feel he is, unlike his first presidency, he's very clear in his second presidency, he would like to leave a mark. He would like to be remembered as the president. So although he may be, people call him a maverick, etc., but his moves will be very, very deliberate and calculated. He has a game plan in mind, and he will proceed according to that. Though it might appear disruptive and conventional to people, but I think there will be a very clear path which he is going to tread. And his first concern, I think, will be the American economy. He understands that. And one reason why a lot of people have voted for him, even from the, what you might say, from the fringe or somewhere who of the fringe of the view,
Right.
are basically because of the economy. And in that, I think while he is doing the balancing act across the globe, India will have certain advantages, though we'll also have to yield some of these things because you recall last time he had made such a big issue of Harley Davidson, the kind of duties imposed on that. So there could be some
Right.
things, either tokenism or otherwise. But I think India has, because I'll just end by saying Trump realizes it's no longer a bipolar world or even a tripolar sort of a situation. It's a multipolar world today, and there'll be spheres of influence. At each place, somebody will have to play a role, and India can play a role not only, as commonly believed, with to some extent balancing China, but India's role, even in the Middle East or the Islamic world, is becoming important, and I think he'll give weightage to that as well.
Right. There you see the live visuals from the Capitol, George W. Bush, the Clintons also there. Shastriji, how do you read these developments, these visuals coming in from Washington, D.C.?
Yes, I don't think there
Ladies
have
and
been so
gentlemen,
many
the
presidents
Chief Justice of the
at a
United States,
presidential
the Honorable John G.
inauguration so
Roberts
far.
Jr., and the Associate Justices
Right.
of the Supreme Court of the United States.
And the dignitaries there trickling.
Oh, there was an occasion recently, though. That was at former President Jimmy Carter's funeral. You had all of them.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And the ceremonial gesture there and the protocol that you have from the Supreme Court of United States, the judges making an entrance. Right, these visuals will continue. Very quickly, I would like to, before I go to Italy, John, if you could hear us now.
Yes.
Obviously, for the United States, a new dawn, I would say. But any word of advice, I would say, for Donald Trump from your side, from the general belief that the Americans would have, even if Trump is assuming power?
You know, I've noted that he has modulated his tone, which is very important because, historically, what presidents do is, at least in their first 100 days, they build a governing majority. But over the last 20 or 25 years, presidents have determined that they can really just work with their own base and their own political party, ignore the other party, and maneuver a majority to get some legislation passed. The thing I would alert Donald Trump to right now is he's going to issue executive orders, but executive orders are ephemeral. They can be turned right around by executive orders by a successor. If this president is looking for a legacy, and I agree that he does, he is looking for a legacy, he's got to ensure that it's legislation that's passed by Congress and supported by a majority of the American people. And so I would say keep that modulated presidential tone that you're showing the last few weeks and today. If you're going to roll up your sleeves, put on the boxing gloves, and go to war against half of the American people, then your legacy will be January 6th, 2021.
Okay, January 6th, 2021, clearly hinting at the scenes that unfolded at the Capitol. John, we'll come back to you just now. Mithali, obviously, for United States, definitely a day to celebrate. But when it comes to the overall sentiments that the world attaches with Donald Trump 2.0, as I mentioned earlier, is there some sense of inhibition, some sense of fear? Because as John mentions, the presidential orders would be passed for sure, but they are ephemeral. Do you think that Donald Trump knows this?
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it is well understood that there are trepidations, there are concerns for many groups. One big group around the world that has concerns is women, because at the end of the day, there are a number of debates around abortion within the US that have taken place. There is a chance that he will sign a presidential order today that prohibits any US funding to go across the world for financing any sort of healthcare where abortion is being performed. So, this kind of concern always remains amongst women. And there are also concerns on diversity, equity, and, inclusivity initiatives being rolled back in the US and around the world. So there are definitely concerns, but at the same time, there's also exuberance, as we can see from these images. A number of tech CEOs, from Google and Tesla, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, everyone is in attendance. And at the end of the day, this is the narrative which is expected to take precedence over the DEI and inclusivity narrative over the next 4 years. We are definitely more likely to see this.
Right. And they receive the who's who of the Americans' power corridor lined up there for the customary oath-taking ceremony of the new president, 47th president, Donald Trump. Brazine, I wanted to come to you and ask you very quickly on the fact that be it ending birthright citizenship or defining only two sexes, these could be some of the first executive orders renaming the Gulf of Mexico and ending the citizenship, birthright citizenship for the children of illegal immigrants. Do you think, on the whole, the American dream for many could come crashing down should this happen in the days to come?
Far from it, because Mr. Trump is speaking what common America, or what you call the Aam Aadmi, the commonsensical man and woman wants. 2 + 2 is 4, it's not 5. There are two genders, despite what the New York Municipal Forum in downtown New York, if you were to go, which tells you there are 35 genders that you can choose from. California is burning, at least parts of LA. Children cannot read and write, but they're being taught critical race theory and other such pernicious aspects, which makes out America to be a settler state, a colonial state, and this sense of guilt of whiteness and other exaggerated notions which are life-denying as such. So I look forward to a slew of legislation on this, on these pernicious aspects, including this so-called DEI mantra, which is just activism and quite frankly has brought in middle managerial jobs for people who are unqualified for any job, quite frankly, in life. That needs to be pointed out and put into perspective. I mean, the way, and I speak from the academy of things, that the way campuses have gone hard left, it is just deplorable, to say nothing of what we've seen in the last 15 months with the glorification of violence, with Hamas rapists and terrorists, where you have people who are actual murderers and rapists being glorified by so-called progressives and PhDs. So the pendulum has swung far to the left in the US, and these cultural wars do have an effect on us in England too, when we don't wish to have them imposed on us in the first place, not to mention elsewhere too. So there is something to be said about common people who do not want their children to be taught by transvestites. Do you see this in schools in Bombay, for instance? Do you find people dressed up in garish clothing and coming and talking to your children about sex and reproduction and other such aspects at the age of 5 and 6? This would be unthinkable anywhere in the world. But this is the kind of nonsense that goes on in hard left places like California, which quite frankly has gone to rack and ruin. And look no further than San Francisco, which was supposedly a beacon of progressivism. I mean, you have to simply, pull the plug at some point on it, and the Republicans are quite right to do so. And let me conclude this aspect, or rant you may call it, with one final point. During the electoral run-up in 2016, before Trump 1.0, Mr. Bernie Sanders, who is something of a socialist and very much on the left in the American political spectrum, at one particular rally was exasperated and blew his top. And what did he say, John, if you remember? America is fed up of hearing about your toilet problems. Nobody gives a hoot which lavatory you use as such. And this was to these so-called Gen Z types and these young wokerati. That is what Bernie Sanders, as decidedly a man on the left, said. America's fed up of your toilet problems and your so-called pronouns and whatever they are. People want to get down with bread and butter issues as such. People don't want to pay $7 and $8 for cereals to be put on the breakfast table every morning. Nobody has time for this sort of nonsense, and it needs to be called out for what it's worth.
Right, Brazine, thank you so much for your thoughts and inputs there. Final comments from Sandeep Ghosh. I won't keep our viewers and the guests from these beautiful visuals coming from the Capitol Hill. Sandeep ji, obviously the business community from all parts of the world has made a beeline there in the pre-inauguration dinner and now in this event as well. For the Indian business community, a win-win situation as of now. Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar?
I don't know whether I'll buy those. I'll pick up those kind of slogans like "Aap ki baat Trump Sarkar." But I was in the U.S. Soon after the elections, and I found among the Indian business community, the few people, this anecdotal, but I found a lot of optimism among them, because everybody has been were quite tired with I was in California mostly, and people were tired with the kind of economic scenario which was there, and the protectionism and everything else hurting their own business. I think there is positivity among them. Now, when you talk of Indian businessmen from India, I think it's still a wait and watch situation. They will. It's not. It's going to be a mixed bag, and people will have to navigate their way through whatever is coming. After this. But overall, see the body language here. Of the people. I think it's very different from his earlier inauguration of Trump. Today, people, I think, across the spectrums have come to accept that he's, his victory, that he's here to stay. And even people, from both sides of the aisle, as it were, you see today, I think there is a great deal more acceptance of Trump as the legitimate president. It's no longer a grudging acceptance. I think people are embracing him, and I think Trump is conscious of that.
Right, Mr. Ghosh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have just a few minutes, just a couple of minutes to very quickly. John, you have been there for a long time. How many inaugurations have you seen so far, presidential inaugurations, and something that you would remember from the past? Which one definitely struck that emotional chord for you?
Well, I'm sad to say that my mother hoisted me up at the age of 4 to watch General Eisenhower in 1952, and we were a very political family. Obviously, there's the very memorable Jack Kennedy inauguration, and an entirely new generation. Certainly, Ronald Reagan's at a low point in American history, with all respect to President Carter, and I must do that, much greater president than he had been given credit for. But there was a morning in America notation. Certainly the charisma of Barack Obama, and what everyone, including myself, thought was a demographic revolution. I'm watching closely today. I want to inject just a slight note of humor, contrasting 8 years ago. Barron Trump, the president's youngest son, was an 11-year-old boy. Now you will note he's a 6 foot 7 inch 19-year-old. That's one way of measuring a trajectory of growth. He's very tall.
Let's hope the economy
and very tall
also...
on the campus at NYU too, I'm sure.
Yes.
Thank you. There you have the First Lady walking in, Melania Trump, in her very iconic fashion statement. We thank all our guests. Yeah, Mitali, I wanted to have a very quick word from your side. We began with you, we end with you also here. Very quickly, your final thoughts here.
So I think, final thoughts, I'm hopeful. I really feel that what we've seen in the last 1 month with the first ceasefire that's happened in Gaza is really a, icon and a moment that we should really look forward to. We really need to see the end of all these conflicts across the world. And if President Trump can really contribute in one way to global peace, to world peace, it's by bringing these conflicts to a halt and forging peace, a lasting peace. So even if, all the other things aside, if he can do this, it will be a great contribution to the world and to the global economy as well as to the lives of people.
Right, indeed. Thank you so much. I'm afraid we have run out of time. Sandeep Ghosh, Mitali Burzine, and John Zogby, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and inputs here on Monday. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Bye.
We leave our viewers with the visuals coming in. There we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, performing O America, please welcome the Armed Forces Chorus and America's tenor, Christopher D. Macchio.
President Biden there with Vice President Kamala Harris. How do you see Shastriji? Please.
Trump has much to thank her for.
Yes. Obviously, in the run-up to the elections, it was clearly touted that Trump has a clear upper hand. But for the Democrats, I would say, I think they had already reached the end of the rope there, and Trump with his resurgent views. how do you see? I mean, was it a surprise for you when Trump came to power?
No, I was not surprised. I was expecting him to win, but I did not expect him to emerge as a new dawn,
Yes, a
literally,
new dawn.
because
Yeah.
he's kind of not just the scale of his victory, Congress, Senate, everything, one fell sweep.
Yes.
And I think they shouldn't have changed horses midstream. I mean, they
Yes.
replaced Biden, once things. And then the buzz was so much about Kamala, that one didn't know where the buzz had become a bubble and everybody was living in that bubble and the liberal media and so on.
Right.
I think they failed to see which way the wind was blowing. That is my feeling.
Well, a young J.D. Vance also making his way into the hall, and J.D. Vance would be the vice president at this age, and
Yes.
Usha Vance, obviously, for all the good reasons, being remembered here very fondly in India.
Yes.
Her aunt
Yes. Yes.
lives here, and
But the interesting thing is that whereas for Biden, Kamala was a prop, in terms of a person of color, a black, and so on. I think in the case of Trump, none of them are his props. Because you can see the kind of people he has chosen.
Right.
That he is going to choose people who will be his instruments. They are not there for any other reason except for the fact that they have his confidence. He knows that he wants them to do something. They will go out there and get it done. This is the way a businessman would function.
Absolutely. See, performance-based, politics is something that is the new fad,
Yes.
I would say. And for Donald Trump, we have seen him right from the days of The Apprentice, where he also meant business, to his running his Trump legacy, to now running the country, United States, for the second time. Without much ado, let's go full frame with the visuals. In a short moment from now, Donald Trump, president-elect, would be walking in, and from there on, it's all about, it's about to go in the history books as well.
Yes.
Thanks for watching this broadcast. We'll be back after the inauguration ceremony.
Weinshaw Schumer and Mrs. Jennifer Scalise. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States, ranking member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer, House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, and Senate Majority Secretary, the Honorable Robert Duncan. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Joseph R. Biden Jr., and Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Kamala Devi Harris. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the Vice President-elect, the Executive Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Mr. Michael Wagner, Senate Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, Jason Bell, and House Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms, Mr. Sean Keating. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, the Honorable J.D. Vance. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President-elect, the Staff Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Elizabeth Farah, House Sergeant-at-Arms, the Honorable William P. McFarland, Senate Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, the